I firmly believe that the gap between the elected and those who elect them has not been wider in my lifetime than it is now. We have a situation where only one side of very important debates are represented in elected chambers. If you have concerns about immigration, for example, you're not represented in elected chambers. If there is someone in the elected chambers who dares to put their head above the parapet and say something about this issue, for example, immigration, if they have the nerve to, a lot of people will be thinking these concerns, but thinking it and saying it are very different. They are very likely to find themselves attacked, labeled, even brought to book under code of conduct regulations, simply for speaking what millions of people across the country are thinking. That has to stop. And for the most part, when this does happen, if someone does put their head above the parapet, which is rare, and express the view of millions of British people, if they do that and they are attacked, which they inevitably would be, many, if not most, will end up apologising for it. I, first of all, make a solemn promise that I'm not afraid to put my head above the parapet. I'm not afraid to represent the voices of the millions who are silenced in this country, and I won't be apologising. People have a right. This is supposed to be a democracy, and people have a right to have their views represented in the elected chambers. Similar for things like, let's say, vaccination. This happened to Karen King, our previous councillor on Hartlepool Council, who was told she had breached code of conduct for saying that we are fear-mongering to children. And that is a view held by very, very many. And Karen is honest and has integrity and said what she thought and what millions of other people think, that we are being fed a diet of fear by the press. This is extraordinary in a democracy, absolutely extraordinary, that a code of conduct can be used to silence an elected representative in an elected chamber who says, A, what she thinks, has the integrity and honesty to say what she thinks, but B, what millions of other people are thinking as well. If we don't stand, then we leave the elected chambers to a single voice and a single opinion. And we leave them to people who make a career out of politics. And in to keep that career, they say what they think needs to be said. They think what won't get them into trouble, rather than what is in the best interests of open and robust debate and in the best interests of the people. If we don't stand, we leave our elected chambers, which, don't forget, do make the decisions that we all have to live under. Elected chambers in this country, particularly Parliament, has the power of life and death over us. How can we just leave them to it? We've got to stand ourselves. We've got to push and push and push our way into these decision-making chambers. And I know how difficult it is. I know that it takes a great deal of courage. And I know that when you're a party like ours, you are facing an uphill battle. It's difficult to campaign regardless, Politics is not an easy arena to be in. It's a snake pit. It really is. But we've got to persevere regardless. And when you're in a party like ours, you face even more challenges than are faced in politics generally. Our party faces the extra challenge of being demonized, smeared, lied about, and people actively seek to stop us making gains and fighting our way into elected chambers, despite the fact that we represent the views of millions of people, and we do. So we either keep fighting, keep standing, or we walk away and leave the decisions that affect our lives to be made by people who don't represent our views. We give up the political arena. I am not willing to give up the political arena. I care about the people of this country and of this town, and I will continue to fight to push this boulder uphill, because breaking into politics, that's what it feels like, and often what it is. But we have to continue to do it. We are also looking at an extreme crisis in terms of people's ability to pay their bills. We are facing this while those in elected chambers are not facing it. The ones who make these decisions are not facing the same hardship as the people on the receiving end of those decisions. That has to change as well. On my live stream on Monday, I spoke about how MPs are claiming for their energy bills for second homes on expenses. Now, we know that energy bills are about to explode. We are not governed by people who are going to use creative ideas, who are going to look for ways to stop those energy bills going up, alternative ways of providing energy, for example, recalculation of taxes, reassessment of public spending, so that we don't face that crisis. Instead, they're telling us to brace ourselves for the very crisis they are allowing to take place. But while we, the people, have to brace ourselves for a energy crisis and a cost of living crisis, the people telling us to do that are claiming public money to pay their bills. This gap between the people and the politicians has got to be closed. We've got to make people into politicians. We've got to do all we can to represent the interests of the people and try to find ways, to argue ways in the public sphere, to expose, to continue to expose the disconnect between the people and the politicians. And that is why I will be standing again this year. And I know what I'm going to face. I know that there will be liars out there who will campaign against me. We'll have the same things that we had last time. Little leaflets put through doors, absolutely filled to bursting with lies. I know that's what I'm going to face, and it doesn't bother me. If you want to achieve something in this life, especially something as challenging, as difficult as this, and as important as this, you have to persevere. You have to keep going. And that's what I intend to do. When are we going to have someone point out the elephant in the room, which is mismanagement of our economy, partly by signing up to net zero rubbish, while India, China are spewing out the very fumes that we're told we're not allowed to. And yet our government and the Labour Party are, of course, on board with all this as well, think that taxing us, and taxes are a huge part of energy cost crisis, taxing us is somehow going to solve this problem as they see it. We have a property price crisis. We have a homelessness crisis. All of it created by policies by Labour and the Conservative Party. At no point are these MPs going to say so. There's no real investigation, no real discussion, no real exposure of the reasons we are in this mess in the first place. And the reasons we're in this mess in the first place is the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. And they pretend that that isn't the case. They pretend that that isn't so. They'll throw £150, £200 at somebody instead of fixing the real problems or even addressing the real problems. And by the way, if you think you're being taxed now, wait till you see what's coming. Tax increases are going to be even more common than they have been. For example, the NHS. You can't get an NHS appointment. I've tried. The best you'll get is a phone call, and you'll wait weeks for that. Try and get an NHS dentist, but wait for it. Your taxes are going up to pay for that as well. Council taxes are going up. No reduction in massive salaries, but council taxes going up. The Labour-Tory stranglehold has to stop. The way forward is political management, competent political management of our economy. Let us not let them get away with pretending they are not causing this crisis in the first place, because they are causing this crisis. It is so important, so crucial that we close the gap and have representatives in our elected chambers that speak for all of us, including those, especially those who have been silenced for years, and the political mainstream won't allow their voices to be heard under shouts of take your pick. Racist is the most common one, probably. Let's get out there and let's keep pushing and pushing and pushing until we win. And we can, and we will. Thanks, everyone. Take care. See you very soon.